Welcome, everyone. Just so lovely to have you all here this morning. Today, I am going to speak about teaching that the Buddha gives. Very, very often, we're talking about forces that are within the human mind, and these uh, two forces of wanting, and not wanting, which is more wanting something else, something different. And these are rooted in delusion. These three very, very universal, deep, problematic forces in every human mind: greed, aversion, and delusion, ignorance. And this morning, we're going to look from the other side at some of the things that happen in life that provoke or elicit, or our response is this wanting and not wanting. And this is a teaching that Buddha gives. This sutta is very, very accessible. And this teaching happens a few times in the suttas and gets called the vicissitudes, the ups and the downs. And this is just life. This is the way it is. So this is from the numerical suttas, the numerical discourses, the Anguttara Nikaya in the Book of Eights, and it's sutta number 5. And the Buddha says, he's talking to monks. It's a bit like mankind, it's an inclusive, supposedly, hopefully, it's an inclusive terminology. But I will just use the word practitioner, spiritual practitioner from any walk of life. Because if you're a spiritual practitioner, you're concerned about your inner life. And that is who the Buddha is wanting to talk to. So, practitioners, these 8 worldly conditions revolve around the world, and the world revolves around these 8 worldly conditions. What 8? Gain and loss, disrepute and fame, blame and praise, and pleasure and pain. These 8 worldly conditions revolve around the world, and the world revolves around these 8 worldly conditions: gain and loss, disrepute and fame, blame and praise, pleasure and pain. These conditions that people meet are impermanent, transient, subject to change. A wise and mindful person knows them and sees that they are subject to change. Desirable conditions don't excite their mind, nor are they repelled by undesirable conditions. When we come to understand more deeply, this just is life, ups and downs, good and bad. We won't be jerked around as much. So these 8 worldly conditions, they come in pairs, and there's 2 sets of the pairs I see as more individual, what the individual experiences: this gain and loss, and this pleasure and pain. And then the set of the other 2 pairs, this praise and blame, and disrepute and fame, we experience more relationally, more in the relational field. And those are the 2 sets I'm going to speak about today. And at a later time, we'll talk about the other 2 sets. So, and it's interesting, it's the way the Buddha says it, it's gain and loss in the positive ones first. And then it's disrepute and fame, the more negative ones first. Blame and praise, the more negative ones first. Pleasure and pain, the more positive ones first. I think it's just this subtle pointing to the fact that these things change. It's up and down, up and down. So, first, we'll talk about blame and praise and blame. And I want to start the, very, very inner world and move out a little bit. So the very, very inner world of praise and blame is what's actually happening within our own mind. And there's a lot of praise and blame going on in our own minds, each and every one of us. And it's a huge source of suffering. And I think, having been around the Buddhist teachings for 15 or 20 years now, and having had more experience with people that didn't grow up in the West, grew up in Asia, slightly different conditioning. In the West, this praise and blame is very, very heavy at this time. And part of it's we have a very individual, there's many causes, very, very individualistic culture. I was reading in this textbook, and it was giving an example, just contrasting an individualistic culture from a more collectivist culture. These terms are too general, and they don't apply as much anymore with the world becoming so global. But the example was poignant. I've given it before. It was from the Olympics, divers being interviewed after their event, and it was the gold medalist and the silver medalist. And one was American and one was Japanese. And the American diver, the interview was all about her. Like I trained hard and I was able to focus and it all came together. It was all about her and her performance. The Japanese medalist, it was collectivist. It was, my family and my coach, and just it was all about the group. And it it comes at a cost when it all depends on us. Then our performance, we can take it very, very personally. This praise and blame, very, very heavy. So to lighten it up, I'll just I'll lighten it up. Try and lighten it up, but hopefully continue to make the point. Um, I can't help it. We have our children's program this weekend. So excited. Um, so we only 2 pages. Sorry, folks. Then you have to listen to me adult talk again. But this is Edward, and Edward says, "I feel bad about my neck." See if you can relate to Edward at all. I feel bad about my neck. I do. I can't help it. Just seriously listen to this poor, I was gonna say poor man, this poor giraffe's inner critic. It's too long, too bendy, too narrow, too dopey, too patterned, too stretchy, too high, too lofty, and my very favorite, it's too necky. Yes, my neck is too necky. And then invariably, when we have this strong inner critic, the very next thing is, and everybody stares at it. I think many of us can relate to dear Edward, and it gets better. He finds a friend and starts to see his neck differently and feel differently about his neck, which a really good friend can help us do. And moving outwards, this praise and blame and praise, it comes at us from outside. There's praise and blame that we experience that's directed towards us from others. Also, another huge source of suffering. So, what does the Buddha say about this? Lots. So, no, I'm not going to. What does the Buddha say about this? I'm going to, this teaching, you can receive it and take it in at so many different levels. So I'll start more superficially and go deeper. The first thing the Buddha has to say about this issue that happens in life that is unavoidable is that it is much more useful and accurate if when there's praise and blame, if when there's disparaging and extolling, it's directed towards the item, to the behavior, to the action, not to the person. A classic story of two different families. One child drops a jar of honey, and the parent, the caregiver, you stupid child, you stupid, and it's direct, it's heavy, it's hard, it hurts, it's very, very painful. And it actually isn't accurate. And then the other caregiver who's able to say, oh, stupid action, it slipped, it's an accident. And the issue is the accident, not not the behavior. And it's interesting, there's certain languages, like English doesn't allow you to do it, but there's certain languages where you don't always have to have a subject for, you know, the vase falling over. The vase can fall over. In English, we have to have, someone did it. So this comes from this beautiful sutta that the Buddha gives. It's recorded in the middle length discourse of Sutta 139, and it's the Sutta on non-conflict. And it's all of these very, very practical advice of how to relate and how to deal with conflict and the differences and the accidents and the problems in a way that is very loving and very beneficial and more accurate. That's the first thing. The second thing that the Buddha has to say is that, I mean, the Buddha is the absolute king of realism. That he's all about reality. He's all about reality. So in the Dhammapada, verse 227 and 228. The second thing the Buddha has to say about praise and blame is uh, this. It's always been this way. It's not just today. They blame you when you're silent. They blame you when you speak a lot. And even when you speak a moderate amount, no one in the world escapes blame. Buddha is always realistic. And then he goes on. The other part of this realistic picture, there never was, nor will be, nor is there today someone who is wholly praised and someone who's wholly blamed. And frankly, no one that's worthy of holy praise, only praise, and no one that's worthy of only blame. There's always there's always more there. It's not just one thing. The third thing the Buddha has to say about praise and blame is in the sutta that I read, and that is that it is changing all the time. It's changeable. It's transient. It's impermanent. It's not fixed. And the more that we can access that, especially, on those high times in our life, it can't stay here. That's not how nature works. That's not how the world works. And when it's really low, it won't always be that way. This too will pass. This too will pass. The fourth thing the Buddha has to say, going deeper and deeper and deeper, is actually the deepest teaching that the Buddha gives, and the teaching that makes the Buddha's teachings unique in the world. And that is that there's no self, not a self, that we are what we take our mind and body to be is not true. We think of ourselves as this separate, autonomous individual that's making all these different choices, that we're driving the bus. And it just is not that way. And when you have deep, deep meditation, you see that for real. And in the meantime, you get exposed more and more from different and different angles to how this is more accurate of reality. Everything is conditioned. Yes, we have some agency, but it's not the amount that we think we have, and it's not always in the ways that we think we have. Uh, and 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 how this relates to praise and blame is very strongly. And the Buddha gives this teaching many times in the suttas. I'm just pulling from the connected discourses in chapter 22, verse Sutta 49. I'll just read a short part of it. And this is where the Buddha's talking with a layman named Sona. And he says, Sona, when any ascetic or Brahmin, any spiritual practitioner, on the basis of form, on the basis of their body, and then he goes on to describe uh, all the aspects of mentality of our mind on the basis of form or on the basis of feeling tone, which is present in every minute of our existence, or on the basis of our perceptions, on the basis of our cognition and our thinking, or on the basis even of our consciousness, our knowing. These make up the mentality. So basically, Sona, if anybody, any spiritual practitioner, on the basis of their mind or their body, which all of it is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, regard themselves thus: I am superior, or I am inferior, or, and this is sort of the drum roll, cymbal crash, or I'm equal. What is that due to? Apart from not seeing things as they really are. The entire idea of measuring ourselves to others in any way, whether we stack up well, stack up badly, or stack up equal. It's all fraught. It's all deeply based in delusion. It just is not helpful. The whole measuring, comparing. The Buddha says, don't do it. I mean, this is easy to say. How on earth do we not do it? Our entire society is based on it, set up. It's the air that we breathe. But even just to have this tiny, flash of, wait a minute, maybe there's another way. Like maybe it's not the right approach. Is 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 a crack in the dark. It's like the Buddha's saying, the way our society is, we have this ladder leaning up on a wall, and we're all climbing this ladder and looking at the other ladders and figuring out, are we above or below or in the same place as these other people on the ladder? And the Buddha's saying there's no wall, and the ladder's like based in delusion, and it's really problematic, and it's causing you a lot of pain. And so, like, stop. It's that drastic. It's that drastic. And, this whole comparing it's on steroids in our society. Um, I don't want to go down that road too far. Social media. Um, I'll give a quick example. It really hit home to me. Uh, at one point, when my daughter's children were slightly younger, like toddlers, she shows me this meme, and it was a photo of what this woman was planning on feeding her children. You know, it was asparagus spears and steak tips and sliced kiwi. And then of course the funny part was what she was, this is sort of before the kid's born, you know. This is her vision of, and then what she's really feeding the children, which is dried Cheerios and cheese sticks. And and we're laughing, and then it hits me how hard it is for my daughter. Like I didn't have that. I didn't have that. As a mom, when I was raising my children, it was before social media, and no woman ever dreamed of feeding their child asparagus spears and sliced kiwi. Like it wasn't even on the radar. Everybody knew they were feeding their kid dried Cheerios and cheese sticks and felt fine about it. There was no comparing. There was no bar. You know, the social media set the bar. It's absurd. It's on steroids. It's a runaway train, and the whole thing. The train is going down tracks that don't actually really even exist. It's that messed up. And just to try and make this like, okay, wow, that would be incredible. How do I stop doing this? I want to give an example and try and talk about it. And that was when I was, when my children were little, we lived in Miami, and we'd been there about a year. Their dad, my ex-husband, was going to University of Miami, getting his doctorate in music, and Hurricane Andrew happened. We were in this little rented house, and of course we evacuated. Many people didn't because they were they were natives, and it was like it's hurricane season. We're always being told to evacuate. Well, it turns out this time it would have been good to evacuate. And the next morning, we're returning to the house, and it took about an hour and a half to find the house because everything, all these trees are down. There's no stoplight, nothing's working. The street signs are gone, and nothing's recognizable. And we get to our house, and of course, it's a mess. The trees down everywhere. And you can't, the many streets, you can't drive down them at this point. I mean, nothing's been done. And I remember opening the back door of the house, this little rented house, and our neighbor's roof was in our backyard. Like all of the shingles and all sorts of pieces of rafter and wood and metal, and it was a mess. And it was like, I have these two look, there's no it was just surreal. I wasn't a practitioner there, but I can remember that moment looking at this absolute disaster and thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much work. And then that was it. And then it hit me. The very next thing was, wow, I would feel so differently if this was from war, if there was someone to blame. There was no one to blame. It was like so clear. It's just nature. Our neighbors did not put their roof in our backyard. And it was so clean and so easy and so light. And see, this is what the Buddha is teaching. Everything is nature. It's nature unfolding. And we're all nature. That's what we are. We're just a product of causes and conditions. And then with the Buddha's teachings, when we learn this, we realize, and so if I put in new causes and new conditions, things will will go a different way, and things will that this is just like nature. It's like trees. We don't compare trees. We don't. A tree is a tree, and it's got its own worth. And we never look at a tree and think, oh, it'd be really a lot better if that branch was a bit lower. We never think like that. And this is what the Buddha has on offer. There's a possibility that we can start to understand more deeply causes and conditions. I mean, causes and conditions, and we can really believe this and take it on board. I mean, why do I speak English? Because of causes and conditions, because I that's the language I got spoken to. It's not like I couldn't speak Swahili or Japanese or French, but I that's not what it's because it's all causes and conditions. And then the fact that I speak English determines some of the ways that I think of things because of the structure of the language. Like this is the way it is. And so then we can start just making everything a lot lighter, like open the windows and bring this air in. And so when something terrible happens and someone betrays you, yes, there's terrible pain, and yes, you need to attend to that. And like you need to clean it up. It's the neighbor's roof is in your backyard. That's a reality. It's hard. And at some level, that person is just doing the best they can. They made a bad choice, whatever causes and conditions. Same for us. It's all nature. And yeah, do whatever you can. Think of the trees. Think of we don't compare them and we don't criticize them and we don't expect them to be different. And they're all beautiful in their own way. They don't uh, we have that opportunity. Hurricane Andrew, it's very interesting. The insurance companies know this, right? Act of nature, no one to blame. It's like the weather. Even eventually we're going to understand and really see that even our thoughts are like that. It's just weather. It's just you sit down to meditate and one time, there's a lot of anxiety. It's it it's from things way in the past or in the recent past, but it's all more complicated and a lot more causes and conditions than we could ever understand. The Buddha says that. Only the Buddha, only a mind of a Buddha can really understand karma. But I really want to share the Hurricane Andrew story. I was not even a practitioner. It was so obvious to me. Wow, when there's no one to blame, it's just so much easier. It's clean, it's light, and it's real. Yeah, we picked up every single shingle. It was all real, but without anger and without feeling like a victim. None of it. None of those stories that we run in our heads worked. There was nothing for it to hang on to. And there's a possibility for us in our lives to more and more approach things from that way, even with ourselves. Just ton of lightening up and understanding, uh, wow, if I put in better causes and conditions, if I'm around people that share some of my values, if I make sure that what I expose my mind to has some merit, some value, some uplift, uh, and watch, when you put in a lot of fear-based, alarmist media and news, how do you feel? Just start tracking. I was a speech language pathologist and working with people that had strokes, and we had an expression, garbage in, garbage out, like because we're not as in control as we tend to think. And then we're not, we don't need to be blame with ourselves. And the other pair is disrepute and fame. And I'll just say a couple of sentences about that. Um, Disrepute and fame. There's a TED Talk. It's one of the 25 most popular TED Talks. It's on what makes a good life. It's this longitudinal study on happiness by a Harvard researcher. He's the fourth researcher to head up this study because it's been going for 80 years. Unheard of. Because a lot of causes and conditions most of the time these longitudinal studies fall apart, but this one has not. And they've just studied people over the course of their life, to be specific, 724 men, of course, because it started in, the 30s, or I guess the 40s. It wouldn't be that way now. But as part of the study, they're just very interested. What makes for a good life? What makes for health and happiness? And as part of the study, a tangent, they surveyed, sorry, they did not interview, they surveyed millennials. I'm not sure the number, how many, of what they thought would make good life. Very alarming. 80% of these millennials thought money. 80%. Even more alarming, 50% thought fame. This is what would make a good life. 50% of millennials. Yeah. So we don't get it a little bit wrong. We get it dead wrong. This is what the Buddha has to say about fame. This is what the Buddha has to say about fame. There's an entire book, an entire chapter in the connected discourses on honor and gain. 10 suttas. 10 suttas. And the Buddha compares fame to a hook, a long-haired goat in a briar patch, and to a corded harpoon, to dung beetles climbing on a pile of dung, to a poisonous dart, to an old jackal with mange. You get the idea. This is not what's going to make a good life. There's a sutta, an interesting sutta in the middle length discourses, sutta number 29. And the Buddha is he's describing this gradual training that we often talk about, this trajectory of walking this spiritual path. And many things unfold as first of all, you start to live a life that's more ethically based and more ethical clarity and conviction. And then you start to be more present and be more mindful. And then you start to be more kind and be more patient, all of these gains. And at every turn, the Buddha is describing stage by stage, and then says, and the meditator is pleased. And then at one point, this in this scenario, this meditator starts to receive some gain and honor because they've gained some wisdom and some peace and some resource. And it's like the Buddha is so clear, and the meditator is not pleased because it's problematic. It makes things harder. It does. There's more pressures on you. We all know this. So this is what the Buddha has to say about fame and disrepute. It's a goat with long hair in a briar patch. It will make your life more difficult. And so, the answer, okay, I'm going to end. And I gave myself this challenge to end the next few talks. I didn't do it last night. End the next few talks with something that Sarah Amelgia, Elmaligi. Yeah. I got it. I avoid saying her name. Elmaligi. She is our NDP MLA for this region in the provincial legislature. And she spoke at Jam for Jasper that a few of us were at a week or two ago. And she was the last speaker. This is our representative in the legislature, our provincial representative. Uh, and she ends the talk quoting her meditation teacher saying, "Love is the answer."
Aw.
And then she goes, "It doesn't matter what the question is. Love is the answer." And she was imbuing it. I mean, she does imbue it. But seriously, praise and blame, love is the answer. We conflate praise and love. We conflate fame and love. And it's they're actually really not the same. And what we all do need is love, not a bunch of praise and not a bunch of fame. And that's what the millennials, that's what they need. That's what they want. They think it'll be through fame and money, but it's not. And they're young. But I'll end with Sarah's quote: "Love is the answer." So I'll end there.